The punch that exposed everything. Bam Adebayo allegedly struck Tyler Herro in Las Vegas, but the punch may be the smallest part of what is tearing the Miami Heat apart. For 7 seasons, Bam and Herro grew up together inside one of basketball's toughest organizations. They survived 2 trips to the NBA Finals, trade rumors, injuries, and the pressure of carrying Miami into a new era. Bam once pushed the Heat to draft Herro. Herro once looked like the perfect partner beside Miami's defensive anchor. But days after a blockbuster trade sent Herro to Milwaukee, that brotherhood appeared to collapse in public. The confrontation began with words. Social media posts linked to an account associated with Herro appeared to criticize Bam's shooting and contract. Then, leaked messages surfaced, turning trash talk into what looked like a personal attack from someone who knew the locker room from the inside. When the two crossed paths during Summer League, years of trust and resentment allegedly exploded inside a Las Vegas practice gym. Miami refused to discuss the incident. Herro offered only 4 words. "My only comment is no comment. No denial. No explanation. No attempt to calm the story," and that silence made everything louder. This was never just about 2 former teammates losing control. It was about a franchise that traded away its emotional continuity for one championship gamble. Miami moved Herro, young talent, and major draft capital to acquire Giannis Antetokounmpo. On paper, Giannis and Bam could become the league's most terrifying defensive partnership. Behind the scenes, the Heat were entering a new era with damaged relationships, shifting power, and enormous pressure. The punch was the headline. The real story was the fracture underneath it. Where are you watching from today? Comment your city or country below and subscribe so you do not miss the next chapter. Press 1 if you believe Miami's gamble will end in a championship. Or press 2 if you think this drama is only beginning. From brothers to enemies. Before the rumors, burner accounts, and confrontation in Las Vegas, Bam Adebayo and Tyler Herro represented Miami's future. They entered the league with different roles and slowly became central to everything the Heat built. Bam was the defensive backbone, a switchable big man who carried the team's physical identity. Herro was the fearless scorer, capable of changing a game with one run and never appearing afraid of the moment. Their connection went beyond ordinary chemistry. Bam reportedly pushed Miami to take a serious look at Herro before the draft. Over time, that belief turned into 7 seasons of shared pressure, playoff battles, injuries, criticism, and 2 trips to the NBA Finals. That history is what makes the breakup so difficult to understand. This was not a veteran leaving after 1 year. Herro and Bam grew inside the same system, under the same demanding standards, with the same expectations hanging over them. They helped carry Miami from the Jimmy Butler era toward whatever came next. But NBA relationships can change quickly when contracts, trades, and pride enter the room. Herro spent years hearing his name in superstar trade rumors. Every offseason, another major player became available, and every offseason, his contract appeared in possible packages. Even when he performed well, the message remained clear. He was valuable, but he was also movable. Bam, meanwhile, became the player Miami chose to build around. That difference may have created tension long before anyone saw it. One player felt like the foundation. The other may have felt like the asset waiting to be exchanged. When the Giannis deal finally happened, it did more than separate 2 teammates. It exposed every buried frustration that 7 years of winning had managed to hide. The friendship did not collapse in one morning. Las Vegas was simply where the damage became impossible to ignore. The message that lit the fuse. The confrontation happened in person, but the spark began online. Soon after, Tyler Herro's move to Milwaukee became public. Posts linked to an account associated with him drew attention. One graphic focused on poor mid-range shooting numbers and included Bam Adebayo among the players criticized. At first, fans treated it like normal post-trade bitterness. Then leaked direct messages appeared. The messages reportedly referenced a teammate earning enormous money while attention remained focused on Herro. The wording was vague enough to create debate, but specific enough that fans connected it to Bam. That changed the tone completely. In NBA locker rooms, arguments are normal. Teammates challenge each other. Coaches push players, and frustration builds during long seasons. But there is an unwritten rule that private tension stays private. Once a player takes those complaints to fans, the issue becomes bigger than basketball. For Bam, the problem may not have been one shooting graphic. It may have been the feeling that someone he trusted for 7 years was discussing him behind his back. Bam was reportedly one of the first people in Miami to believe in Herro. They shared playoff runs, criticism, and the pressure of representing a franchise obsessed with accountability. If the messages were authentic, Bam may have viewed them as betrayal from someone who knew exactly how much those words would hurt. Herro's silence added more fuel. He did not clearly deny the reports, explain the account, or offer a detailed version of what happened in Las Vegas. That allowed everyone else to write the story for him. By the time both players arrived at Summer League, the situation was almost impossible to avoid. Executives, agents, players, and reporters were gathered in one city. Every rumor traveled faster, and every reaction became a headline. When Bam and Herro finally crossed paths, the argument was no longer about one post. It was about trust, respect, money, and whether 7 years of brotherhood could survive once business entered the picture. Miami's all-in gamble. To understand why the relationship broke, you have to understand the trade that changed everything. Miami did not make a small adjustment. In the scenario described by the original report, the Heat sent Tyler Herro, multiple young players, major draft capital, and long-term flexibility to Milwaukee for Giannis Antetokounmpo and Bobby Portis. That is not a normal trade. That is a franchise placing its future on one championship window. For years, Miami had been linked to superstar pursuits. The Heat were always mentioned as a destination and always searching for the move that could return them to the top of the East. Giannis represented the biggest possible answer. On paper, the idea is terrifying. Pair Giannis with Bam Adebayo, and Miami suddenly owns two of basketball's most versatile front-court defenders. Both can switch, protect the rim, run the floor, and turn defense into instant offense. In a playoff series, that combination could force opponents into uncomfortable matchups for 7 games. But the price changes the conversation. Herro was Miami's most proven perimeter creator. He provided shooting, late clock scoring, and the ability to punish defenses that collapsed into the paint. Removing him from a roster built around Giannis and Bam creates an obvious question: who keeps the floor spaced when both stars want to attack inside? Miami also gave up young players and premium picks, leaving fewer ways to repair the roster later. Financial restrictions make quality depth harder to find. Veterans on smaller contracts can fill minutes, but they cannot automatically replace Herro's production. That is why this trade has no safe middle ground. If Giannis and Bam win a championship, the deal becomes legendary. Every asset Miami surrendered becomes part of the price of greatness. If the Heat fall short, the same deal becomes a warning. Miami would be older, more expensive, thinner, and short on future control. And Tyler Herro would become the face of everything the franchise sacrificed to take that risk. Why Tyler Herro became expendable? Tyler Herro did not leave Miami because he lacked talent. He left because he had value. That is the cruel reality of NBA roster building. Teams rarely acquire superstars by offering players nobody wants. To get Giannis Antetokounmpo, Miami needed a centerpiece with scoring ability, market appeal, and a contract large enough to help make the numbers work. Herro checked every box. He had grown from a teenage draft pick into a proven offensive weapon. He won 6th Man of the Year, earned an All-Star selection, and became one of Miami's most dependable perimeter scorers. He could create off the dribble, shoot from deep, and carry stretches of offense when the Heat struggled to generate easy points. But those strengths also made him Miami's most tradable young star. The Heat had to decide whether Herro belonged in their final championship core or whether he was the piece capable of bringing in someone greater. Once Giannis became available, that debate was effectively over. Contract uncertainty made the situation sharper. Miami had to consider future flexibility, tax restrictions, and how much money it wanted committed to a roster that had already fallen short. Herro may have believed his production earned long-term security. The front office may have viewed the same contract as its best path to a blockbuster. Both sides could understand the business and still feel betrayed by the outcome. Herro's farewell message sounded grateful and emotional, but the social media activity that followed suggested the public goodbye may not have reflected everything he felt privately. That often happens when a player is praised for years, then moved the moment a bigger opportunity appears. The front office calls it strategy. The player experiences it as rejection. For Herro, the pain may have been deeper because Bam stayed. Miami did not simply choose Giannis. It chose Giannis with Bam, creating a new partnership while sending Herro away from the one he had spent 7 years building. That does not justify public attacks or a physical response, but it explains why the emotions became so intense. Herro was not simply traded, he was replaced in the story of Miami's future. Giannis and Bam, dominant or dangerous? On defense, the vision is obvious. Giannis Antetokounmpo and Bam Adebayo could become the most disruptive front-court pairing in the league. Both are mobile enough to defend in space, strong enough to handle bigger opponents, and intelligent enough to erase mistakes before they become points. Miami could switch more actions, trap aggressively, protect the rim, and turn missed shots into transition attacks. Erik Spoelstra built his reputation on flexible schemes, and this pairing would give him options most coaches can only imagine. But basketball is not played only on one end. The biggest question is spacing. Giannis is most dangerous when the lane is open and he can attack downhill. Bam also operates best near the paint, from the elbows, or as a screen and roll creator. Put both on the floor without enough shooting, and defenses may crowd the lane and force Miami's role players to win games from outside. That is where losing Herro mattered. Miami gave up one of its best shooters to acquire a superstar who needs shooting around him. The Heat can search for veteran specialists, but cheaper players often come with trade-off. A shooter may struggle defensively, a defender may not create offense, a veteran may not remain healthy. Health is another major variable. Giannis brings MVP-level impact, but Miami's championship chances depend on his body surviving a long season and 4 playoff rounds. The Heat cannot spend their assets and then enter the postseason with their best player limited. Bam will also carry a heavier burden. He becomes the emotional bridge between the old Heat and the new one, responsible for helping Giannis adjust while proving the roster can survive the breakup with Herro. If the partnership works, Miami could overwhelm the East with size, speed, and defensive pressure. If it fails, the reasons may be simple: not enough shooting, not enough depth, and too much responsibility placed on 2 stars who occupy similar areas of the floor. The talent is undeniable. The fit is not guaranteed. This could become a historic pairing or the most expensive experiment Miami has ever attempted. Is Pat Riley still in control? For 3 decades, the identity of the Miami Heat was inseparable from Pat Riley. He was the architect, the enforcer, the public voice, and the symbol of a franchise that believed discipline could defeat talent when talent lacked discipline. Players came and went. Superstars challenged the organization. Riley remained. Now, for the first time, that power appears less absolute. Reports and public comments suggested that Nick Arison had become increasingly influential in major decisions, with Riley and Erik Spoelstra still involved but operating inside a changing structure. That does not mean Riley disappeared. It means Miami may be entering a transition the franchise has not fully explained. The Giannis trade makes that question more important. Was this Riley's final massive swing? Was it ownership's decision to accelerate the timeline? Or was it a consensus move created by a front office trying to prove Miami could still land the superstar it had chased for years? The answer matters because responsibility becomes unavoidable if the plan fails. Riley's approach has always been direct: meet the standard or leave. That philosophy helped build championship teams and created the mythology of Heat culture. But the same rigidity has also produced conflict with powerful players who wanted more influence. LeBron James tested that structure. Jimmy Butler eventually clashed with it. Now Herro's exit and Bam's reported confrontation have created another moment where the culture looks less unified than its public image. Meanwhile, Spoelstra remains the most stable figure in the building. He survived past superstar tension, earned the organization's trust, and became one of the league's most respected coaches. But stability does not remove pressure. He must integrate Giannis, manage Bam's expanded role, repair the emotional atmosphere, and build a championship offense with limited flexibility. If Miami wins, Riley's legend grows and the new leadership structure is validated. If Miami loses, every level of the organization will be questioned. Who approved the cost? Who believed the roster had enough shooting? Who decided the future could be sacrificed now? The Heat have always presented themselves as one voice. This season may reveal how many voices are actually making the decision. The dark side of Heat culture. Heat culture is one of the most powerful brands in basketball. It represents conditioning, accountability, sacrifice, toughness, and the belief that every player must serve something larger than himself. That identity helped Miami remain competitive across different eras, even when the roster did not appear talented enough to contend. But culture can become pressure when the standards never stop. Former players have described Miami practices as more demanding than games. Conditioning tests are serious. Reputation does not protect anyone from criticism. Veterans, stars, and rookies are expected to meet the same level of discipline. That system can create champions. It can also exhaust people. Erik Spoelstra reportedly carried enormous stress after Miami's disappointing finish. Bam has spent years being asked to defend, facilitate, lead, and represent the organization's identity. Herro entered the system as a teenager and grew up hearing that comfort was the enemy. When players live under that pressure, emotions do not disappear. They become compressed. Every trade rumor feels personal. Every contract discussion becomes a judgment. Every mistake can seem like proof that someone does not belong. Over time, teammates may stop seeing each other only as partners and begin seeing each other as threats to their role, money, or future. That does not mean Heat culture caused the reported confrontation, but it may explain why the situation became so intense. Herro may have felt discarded after years of meeting the organization's demands. Bam may have felt publicly disrespected by someone who understood the code better than almost anyone. Both men were shaped by the same system, yet they may have learned different lessons from it. For Bam, loyalty may mean protecting the locker room. For Herro, loyalty may have felt meaningless once the franchise traded him. Now Giannis enters with enormous expectations. He is not a young player learning the rules. He is a former champion and MVP with his own habits, leadership style, and beliefs. Miami must decide whether Heat culture is flexible enough to embrace him without forcing every relationship into the same mold. Because the strongest cultures do not only demand sacrifice, they also know when to listen. The reunion the entire NBA will be watching. The first game between the Miami Heat and Milwaukee Bucks will not feel like a normal regular season matchup. It will feel like a public trial. Tyler Herro will walk into the same building as the organization that drafted him, developed him, celebrated him, and eventually decided he was the price of acquiring Giannis Antetokounmpo. Bam Adebayo will stand across from the teammate who spent 7 seasons beside him before their relationship reportedly collapsed during one explosive morning in Las Vegas. And Giannis will face the franchise he once represented while carrying the pressure of proving Miami was right to give up almost everything for him. Every detail will be examined. Will Bam and Herro shake hands before the game? Will they speak during warm-ups? Will one avoid looking at the other? What happens the first time Herro attacks Bam on a switch? What happens if Bam blocks his shot, celebrates, or sends him to the floor with a legal but physical defensive play? In an ordinary game, those moments would disappear into the flow of basketball. In this game, every possession could become evidence. The television cameras will search for facial expressions. Reporters will study body language. Social media will slow down every stare, every shoulder bump, and every conversation between the two benches. Even a routine foul could be presented as the continuation of a feud that neither player has fully explained. That creates a dangerous emotional test. Milwaukee will need Herro to prove that his best response is production. He will have every reason to play aggressively, but revenge can destroy decision-making. If he begins forcing shots just to send a message, Miami will know exactly how to use his emotions against him. The Heat face an even more complicated challenge. Bam is now one of the unquestioned leaders of the franchise. He cannot allow the past to control his performance or the behavior of the team. His responsibility is no longer just to defend, rebound, and facilitate. He must show that Miami's new era is stable, disciplined, and larger than one personal conflict. Then, there is Giannis. He may have nothing to do with the original tension, but his presence connects every part of the story. Miami traded Herro to get him. Milwaukee lost him and received Herro as part of its new direction. The moment Giannis steps onto the floor, both teams will begin measuring the trade in real time. If Miami wins convincingly, the Heat will present it as proof that the new partnership is already working. If Herro leads Milwaukee to victory, every question about what Miami sacrificed will return immediately. That is why this matchup matters beyond the final score. It will reveal whether Herro can transform rejection into maturity. It will reveal whether Bam can lead without allowing anger to define him. It will reveal whether Giannis and Miami can survive the level of pressure created by an all-in championship gamble. The first reunion will not resolve 7 years of history in one night, but it may show which side has truly moved forward and which side is still trapped inside the moment everything fell apart. Championship or collapse. The Miami Heat have reached a point where there is no comfortable ending. Every possible outcome carries consequences that could shape the franchise for years. The first ending is the one Pat Riley, Erik Spoelstra, and the entire organization are betting on championship success. Giannis Antetokounmpo stays healthy. Bam. Adebayo becomes the ideal defensive partner beside him. Spoelstra builds a system that protects the paint without destroying the spacing. Veteran shooters accept smaller roles, the locker room finds stability, and Miami becomes nearly impossible to break over a 7-game series. If that happens, the trade becomes legendary. Nobody will care about the draft picks Miami surrendered. Nobody will complain about losing young players. Tyler Herro's departure will be remembered as the painful but necessary price of bringing another championship banner to South Florida. Winning changes the meaning of every sacrifice, but the second ending is far more uncomfortable. Miami could become a strong team without becoming the best team. Giannis and Bam may dominate defensively, yet the offense could struggle when opponents pack the paint. Injuries could interrupt the season. The lack of depth could become impossible to hide during the playoffs. One cold shooting series could end everything before the Heat reach the finals. In that scenario, Miami would still have star power, but very few tools left to repair its weaknesses. The draft capital would be gone. Much of the young core would be in Milwaukee. Financial restrictions would limit the front office's option. Every role player signed on a small contract would carry more responsibility than expected, and every Tyler Herro performance would become part of the judgment. If he thrives in Milwaukee, critics will ask whether Miami underestimated him. If the Bucks advance further than the Heat, the trade will be analyzed not as one move, but as a transfer of hope from one franchise to another. Then there is the third ending, the one Miami should fear most. Internal collapse. A championship team can survive missed shots, it can survive injuries, losing streaks, and difficult playoff matchups. What it cannot survive is a locker room that no longer trusts itself. If Bam feels pressure to carry the entire culture, resentment can grow. If Giannis feels the roster around him is not good enough, frustration can spread. If Spoelstra is forced to manage personalities instead of basketball, every strategic problem becomes harder. If Riley, ownership, and the new decision makers are not fully aligned, the players will eventually feel that uncertainty. That is the deeper lesson behind the entire Bam Herro story. 7 years of shared success did not guarantee permanent trust. Once private frustration became public, the relationship changed. Once business decisions became personal, respect began to disappear. And once emotions reportedly became physical, the conversation stopped being about basketball. No player should be humiliated for being traded. No teammate should respond to criticism with violence. No organization should expect loyalty while refusing to communicate honestly. Real leadership is not about avoiding disagreement. It is about controlling what happens after disagreement begins. Bam must lead with discipline rather than anger. Herro must allow his game to answer the people who doubted him. Giannis must enter Miami with confidence, but also respect for a locker room still rebuilding its identity. Spoelstra must demand accountability while making sure pressure does not become destruction. The Heat chose urgency over patience. They chose superstar talent over continuity. They chose one championship window over the safety of a slower future. Now they must prove the gamble created a team rather than simply collecting powerful names. Because this season will not only decide whether Miami can win another title, it may decide whether Heat culture is still strong enough to hold people together when the pressure becomes almost unbearable. Do you believe Miami's all-in gamble ends with another championship? Or will the pressure eventually tear the team apart? Comment 1 if you believe Giannis and Bam will lead the Heat to the title. Comment 2 if you believe the trade will end in disappointment. Tell us the city or country you are watching from, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share this story with another NBA fan who needs to know what is really happening behind the headline.